Okay, now before we go on to look at the next typical plant cell, it's important to realize that plant cells have all the features that we've just looked at. Just like in animal cells, they'll have a nucleus, they'll have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and mitochondria. What we're going to look at is what they have in addition to those. Plant cells have a large permanent vacuole. A vacuole is just like an empty space inside the cell. It's bound by a membrane again, and they can use it for a lot of things. We'll look at these in a minute, but animal cells sometimes have vacuoles as well, but they're usually small and they're not there all the time. They can use this vacuole to store sap, and they can also use it to help control how much water the plant cell has, to help it survive times of drought or when there's too much water about. Okay, now the main reason why plants look green is because they got chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are specialized to do photosynthesis. They contain the chemical chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the chemical that will allow photosynthesis to happen. Around the outside of their cell membrane, plant cells also have a cell wall. At this point, I want to really stress that the cell wall is not for protection. It does not protect the cell. It really doesn't. Get that out of your brains right now, okay? It's got a lot of other uses, but it does not protect the cell. Instead, the cell wall provides structure and support for the plant cell. It's made from a very tough fibrous material called cellulose, which plants can make. And it's not really a wall as such. It's more like a mesh or a cage than. Here's a picture of some cages and mesh and Wolverine for some reason. Okay, because they're made from this tough kind of fibrous material, the cellulose, it allows plant cells to be stacked together like Lego. This is one of the reasons why plants don't need a skeleton, for instance. They have the cell wall provides enough kind of structure and support for them. Here's a picture of some Lego blocks getting stacked. And somebody's made this fairly awesome DNA thing out of Lego. That's pretty cool, this double helix. And finally, here's a picture of some bloke ripping his heart out, but his heart's made of Lego. I don't know what that's about. Okay, that was a bit of a slog so far, but we're almost there. We've just got two more types of cell we're going to look at, and they'll be much quicker in comparison to the others, so hang in there, we're almost there. And as I said, there's a kitten at the end. Hold on to that thought. We're going to have a look at some bacterial cells now, and bacteria are very different from the animal and plant cells that we looked at so far. Firstly, bacteria don't really have a nucleus like plant and animal cells do. Instead, their DNA just kind of floats about in the cell membrane, in the cytoplasm. Because if you think back to our animal and plant cells, we had our nucleus, which was separated from the rest of the cell by a nuclear membrane. These are eukaryotic cells, and they're a bit more complex than the simpler bacteria, which we're going to have a look at now. I shouldn't really refer to bacteria as simple because they're not really. For example, in addition to having just one chromosome with their normal genetic information, they've also got a plasmid. It's like a ring of extra genetic information which they can use when reproducing for an extra bit of variation. It allows them to mutate very rapidly. Bacterial cells also have a cell wall. Now it's not like the plant cell wall. It's not made of cellulose, but it serves a similar function. In addition, bacterial cells also have a slime capsule. Now that is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a layer of slime around the bacteria, and it prevents it from getting dried out from all its water evaporating. Now they come in many different shapes. Bacteria come in loads of different shapes. For example, they come in kind of a rod-like form called bacilli or a bacillus. An example is Bacillus extremothermophilus. That's a bacteria that you can't kill by boiling water. You have to kind of reboil it. Very tough stuff. They come in a kind of this is going to be funny either way you look at it. They come in a ball shape, which are known as cocci. For example, Streptococcus. If you get strep throat, it's caused by a strep bacteria. And finally, they come in a kind of spiral shape or spirala. For example, Treponema pallidum causes syphilis. Did I get that right? Treponema pallidum? Anyway, causes syphilis. Not good stuff. Finally, bacterial cells often have a flagellum as well. It comes from the Latin for whip, and what it is, it's kind of like a hair that sticks out the back, and it will whip back and forth, propelling the cell forward. Some bacteria have more than one, but they're usually used for movement. Okay, the last type of cell we're going to look at, and it's been a long video this one, we're going to look at yeast cells. Now, yeast are a type of fungi, and they've got a lot in common with animal and plant cells. But let's just have a look in a bit more detail. They have a distinct nucleus, just like an animal or a plant cell. But they can do the strange thing. They can reproduce asexually, which means without having a partner, by budding. When yeast cells bud, their genetic information divides and kind of goes towards one part stays in the rest of the cell, and another goes towards the cytoplasm, or kind of bulges out and separates into two separate cells. Yeast cells also have a cell wall, just like plant cells and bacterial cells, and they do a similar job. They help it to control its water. Yeast cells are also able to respire anaerobically. Now, before we look at anaerobic respiration, we're going to look at aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration requires oxygen. Right, remember it's in the air. You need oxygen to do aerobic respiration. And that is where you take glucose, which is your fuel, you combine it with the oxygen, you kind of burn it, and it gives off energy. Just like when you burn a fuel, it gives off energy. Unfortunately, there's some byproducts associated. You also produce carbon dioxide and water vapor. Water. We can use this with yeast to make things like bread, where when they give off carbon dioxide, the gas will cause the bread to rise. Also for cake, unlike this unfortunately rubbish cat cake. We don't like cat cake. Go away, cat. You're not welcome here. Okay, anaerobic respiration is the opposite. It's respiration that does not require oxygen. Instead, you just take your glucose, your fuel, and use it to release some energy. Now, it doesn't give as much energy as aerobic respiration, but it does give some. And of course, your glucose molecule is rearranged to form ethanol, a type of alcohol, and carbon dioxide gas. And we can use obviously this alcohol is quite useful. We can use it for alcoholic beverages like this delicious beer, which you should not try until you're 18. The process which we use is we sometimes call this anaerobic respiration of yeast fermentation. Right, that was a bit of a whopper of a long one. Here's a picture of a kitten petting a duckling. It might be ready to eat it, I don't know. But anyway, well done. That was a whopper of a video. Take a break. Have a Kit Kat. Not literally, on here.